Okay, today we'll be learning about the environmentalism movement and the three different time periods of it. Just a little background for everybody. In the late 1800s and the early 1900s, America was going through a time called the Industrial Revolution, which we've learned about before. And because of this, metropolitan areas became very overpopulated and extremely dirty and heavily polluted. As some became aware of this, they became highly concerned about it and how it might affect their environment, quality of life, and life expectancy. This led to concerned Americans to create a movement known as the environmentalism movement. So today we'll be splitting up into three different groups, splitting up as evenly as possible, and each group will be assigned a time period. The time periods are from 1880 to 1930. And then the next time period is from 1950 to 2000, and then from 2000 to present day. So that means 2000 to 2020. What each of you will do is research on your own using like your phones or books that we have here in the classroom. And you need to answer 4 questions, and you need to create a poster to show to everybody, so then everybody can get a good sense of what happened with the environmentalism movement in your time period. The 4 questions you need to answer is: was there an environmentalism movement during this time? How did developing technology affect environmentalism during this time period? Did environmentalism affect politics during this time period? And how did geography affect conservationism and environmentalism during this time period? So like where they live, where environmentalists lived affect how they were able to move on with their efforts in environmentalism or conservationism. All right, so students, go ahead and get ready. Our group is 1880 to 1930. The environmentalism movement was a small movement because of the Industrial Revolution and mass migration and urbanization. So a lot of people didn't care about the environment as much because they were really into the Industrial Revolution and bigger cities. There was more conservation and less urban areas because of the Dust Bowl. After the Dust Bowl, a lot of people in farming areas started to care more about how they were farming and things like that, and overpopulation. The Industrial Revolution swayed away a lot of people because that's how they made money. So technology did have a pretty big part in the environmentalism movement during this time, in the way that it made it not as important to people. So that's why not a lot of people cared about it at that time, because the Industrial Revolution was employing so many people. However, politics did play a little bit of a part in the environmentalism movement during this time, and the conservation movement, because President Teddy Roosevelt started the Boone and Crockett Club, which was a conservationist club that helped with wildlife and preserving national forests and stuff like that. And he also emphasized national parks and conservation. And this is just a picture of like NYC and this is like pollution in NYC, and this is a tree. He's sad because he's dying because of the Industrial Revolution. So yeah, that's our first group. All right, our group had 1950 to 2000. The first question that we answered was about was there an environmentalism movement during this time, and there was a much bigger movement because of the peace movements and anti-war efforts that were going on during this time. So like the hippie movement, stuff like that, Woodstock, and geography did play a little bit of a factor in this time period, because there were bigger movements in more urban areas such as California and New York City, places like that, because of the peace and anti-war efforts that people created. Technology did play a big factor in this because of the anti-nuclear movements that were going on during this time. And they drove the environmentalism movements during this time as well. So anti-nuclear war, stuff like that was going on after World War II, things like that. And politics also played a big movement in the late 80s or like late 70s, early 80s, because President Nixon signed many environmentalism acts, such as the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Acts, the Ocean Reserve Act, and he also signed the creation of Earth Day. So yeah, we just have some flowers and the earth right there, things like that on ours. So that's 1950 to 2000. Okay, our group had 2000 to present day. The first question we answered was there an environmentalism movement at this time? Obviously, yes, there was. It was very widespread and big movement. It's all over the world now today. Did geography play a part in the environmentalism movement during this time? Not really. There is bigger movements in more urban areas, but really everybody knows about the environmentalism movement, and pretty much anywhere you go, you can find somebody that is a supporter of it also. And how did technology affect the environmentalism movement? Social media affected the environmentalism movement a lot because it spreads awareness about things like global warming and climate change. And it also can spread new information, and new information is at your fingertips. So things about like climate change, endangered species, global warming, things like that. Did politics play a part in the environmentalism movement? I would say absolutely. The Green Party became more popular during this time, and climate change is a big political issue at this time. In every presidential debate, there's always questions about climate change, things like that. Also, the Paris Climate Treaty, which is a big deal now, with a lot of big countries signing it, and the US were just recently pulling out of it with President Trump. And there's a lot of controversy now on if it's worth it or not. So we just have two protesters here. This guy is saying climate change is real, save us. And this guy is saying that weather goes in cycles, save our money. So we can see how this is a controversial thing, because a lot of people don't think it's worth it to put a lot of money into the environment, because the world has lived this long. They don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. And a lot of people say that it is real, and that the world has never gone through this before, and if we don't stop it, man-made climate change, that it's going to ruin us. So that's 2000 to the present day.